There we go.
We're definitely live now.
There we go.
Oh, see, I'm definitely getting negative marks from Jim for this.
Full start. Full start.
Anyway, so once again, Zach, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Dave. How you doing? Jack, good to meet you.
Doing all right. I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here. It's always nice. I got what I expected. You know, what else can I say?
Yeah, I feel like I've done the post game recap a couple times on High and Wide, and it's always after a game where there's not much to say because this was totally expected because this is the worst homestand in NHL history.
See, I'm throwing around similar lines like that, like just this team. It's why I'm so low on them. And Dave has billed me Captain Rebuild, and rightfully so. I'm just, you know, for the last, I don't know, 8 years, I've been on their kids are coming, they're turning it around, whatever. It's, you know, and then after these like last 2 seasons, last year, COVID and all, whatever.
Yeah.
I just lost all confidence. Like, and I know they're injured. Like, I'm not blind. You know, I'm not turning a blind eye to that on purpose just to be negative because I was positive for so long. And it's just like I come in now and I don't even get upset when they get scored on. It's like it's so expected. And I just see more of the same. God, I'd never seen them whiff on so many attempts and shots and just – this is one of the worst defensive teams here in Edmonton, and they could barely generate any real offense.
It's such a bad defensive team.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, if we had lost 6-3, that makes sense.
Which a lot of people picked those similar scores, and they get shut out.
Hey, for the record, the Gamblers Guide picked the under, and we hit the under tonight. Just letting you guys know.
Oh, congratulations, Dave! Yes, parlays are always fun to hit.
Thanks.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, it gets shut out at home by arguably one of the worst defensive teams in the NHL was both shocking yet expected. Shocking yet expected. That's the I feel like that's the whole, instead of hashtag bring it to broad, it should be hashtag shocking yet expected. that should be the Flyers hashtag going forward.
Oh my God!
I mean,
bring it to broad. Has any team had 2 bad hashtags back to back? The last year's was, if you remember, was anytime, anywhere, which made no sense.
Yeah, right.
Because games are scheduled at a certain time at a certain location.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the Flyers ever just did a Mighty Ducks thing and just had like a 1 a.m. game and beat up on the Jets. Never happened. It should have been certain time, certain place. And then this year, bring it to broad. I know we all got a little cocky. I was like you, Jack. I was weirdly optimistic going into the season because we had some additions to the team that I got very excited about because I watched their highlight reels. Like Rasmus was certainly exciting because if you condense his career into 3 minutes on YouTube, he seems like an all-time defenseman. Then if you watch 3 minutes of him actually out on the ice, he looks lost and disaffected.
If you just watch the 3-minute highlight reel, he's the closest thing the Flyers have had to Chris Pronger since Chris Pronger.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's the closest thing to the NHL has had since Zdeno Chara. If you watch that 3-minute highlight reel, yeah. It's not even like, how can you even really get upset anymore? But we do, right? I still get upset. The first thing that I do is text all my Flyers friends, like, God damn it, like we did it again. But most texts come back either without a response or again, what did you expect? This is what happens with this team.
It's seeing like lines on Twitter, just like my favorite tonight was probably like, we're no longer in the Minnesota Viking territory. We're now the Detroit Lions. And it really feels that way. Like the losing culture is just, that's what we are now. There's no excuses. Like this is just who we are. And it's from what I grew up with and, the 90s, the Lindros, the Leclerc, the Legion of Doom line followed that up when we added the Roenick those years, the Primos. And then after the lockout with the Carter, Richards, Pronger, all that, this from, I want to say like 2015, 2014 to today, easily the worst era in Flyers hockey. And it's just the years are getting longer and longer. You had that one anomaly year, the COVID bubble where they were pretty good. I think we saw some kinks in the armor towards the end of that season,
We
unfortunately.
did. You remember that was a weird year there. Like the Lakers won the NBA playoffs, and COVID got some champions that probably
right. And I got friends that tell me like, well, they made the playoffs twice under Hacksaw. I'm like, did you watch the playoffs? They got embarrassed by division rivals both times, bad. You know, like I think the Pittsburgh series went to Game 6, but when they lost like 5-0. It wasn't even close. It was so horrible. And I just keep waiting for everything to turn around, and it's just more the same. And now we're just other outlets talk about us like where they used to like Toronto. I listened to a couple Toronto podcasts, and they're just like, Flyers, please be relevant. Please. It's the league is better when you're relevant. And I couldn't agree more. They're a team that like they were rebuilding right around the same time we were. And I just see where they're at, where we're at. And it's like, man, like when is something going to break our way, man? It's so hard to get behind this team. And I'm just any optimism I have for the future, Dave, that's why I'm Captain Rebuild, man. Like I'm just like I can't do it.
Well, we just went through a rebuild. We were supposed to just going through a rebuild. You can't tell me go through another one again. I can't take 15 years of rebuilding.
I know. Right. Can I say two things about Jack? First, I don't know if do you curse on this podcast at all? Or,
go ahead, man. You're fine.
Fuck Toronto. And I don't want to hear them talk shit about anything that is going on here in Philadelphia about our relevancy. All right, get through a fucking playoff round before you tell and don't waste some of the best players in the league at the prime of their careers. Because I went on a Toronto radio station a couple of months ago to talk about the Flyers, and basically, their FCC rules are different, but I can't say the word fuck like I can here. But the whole the whole thing was like, go to hell, Toronto. Like you haven't won a cup since '67, so I'm not interested in you talking about us being relevant. I know there's nothing else going on in your city now that your big fat crack addict mayor has died, but I'm not interested in your comments. Believe me, we have enough self-hate without you projecting anything on us. And then the rebuild, Jack. The rebuild, I know Sixers fans, which we're finally getting excited about the Sixers again. The process became kind of this funny word because we have Simmons, who was part of the process, Fultz, and Julia Okafor, who really didn't work out, but they finally figured it out. When you say rebuild, Jack, rebuild means what? In terms of Flyers culture, because we don't even have guys that we get upset that we're trading away or won't play for the Flyers. We have Cam York, who's mildly exciting. We have Morgan Frost, who has been deemed not an NHL worthy player. Wade Allison's, who as soon as he steps outside sprains an ankle. Like there's not a rebuild here that's really meaningfully happened. You look at the Rangers. The Rangers, as much as I hate to praise the Rangers, they did it kind of better. They've brought up a young core of guys. Calgary's brought up a young core of guys, and they're playing really well together. Carolina certainly has put together a good team through the draft and mining prospects. The rebuild here, it wouldn't even be able to start until like 2028. We're kind of just this lousy team until I don't know when. I don't know what happens. But to even use that term rebuild, because we can't, there's not the young group of gifted players that we can shift out the Van Riemsdykes and the Couturiers for.
Yeah, and I get a lot of flack, and the way I look at it is it failed, Dave, which is 100% true, and a lot of that, I'm not big on revisionist history, so all this they were going to take Makar, and Hextall said no. It was actually Heiskanen, who we heard was that not Makar. It just makes the narrative worse. But Hextall screwed it up. It is what it is. He didn't do enough when Giroux was in his prime, and that's part of it too. When they were rebuilding then, or if you want to even call it that, because Hextall didn't do the full thing. The most meaningful player he traded away was probably Brendan Coburn, and then like 3 years later, Braden Shen. And he was still young at the time. So that was just completely, misdid that whole thing. So now we're all, and the Sixers don't necessarily help. They have only just recently got pretty good. But the whole rebuild thing it scares everybody, and I get it. What I worry about is, and I understand the team's not going to do that. They're going to go forward next year, and I kind of, with the team they have now, they can do one more mountain moving off season like they did last year and really try to go for it and hope everybody stays healthy. I just don't know. Even if they do that, I don't even know if they're a contender. And I feel like we're kicking the can further down the road before we do have to start the rebuild. So where you say, I just went through one, I don't want to go through, I don't want to wait another 6-7 years. Well, we might be the same team for a few more years and then start the rebuild. And then my kid's going to be like in college and he was born last year. I mean, like, and that's what scares me. And it's. I think we're doing a little bit of both. There's retool / rebuild. That's why you got to get what you can for Giroux and Ristolainen and whatever. And half of those assets, if not all, are going to go towards next year. I'm kind of on the train, depending on how low this pick is, that they take a guy. They could take a center. There's some names out there like a Geeky, like he comes to mind. I haven't really dove into the serious. The draft yet, like I have in the past, but there's guys out there, and they're obviously going to do something in the offseason. Every possible name has been floated, but after next season, if we have something similar to this season, or we're nothing more than a playoff bubble team, then what? You're probably capped out on money and assets. What's left?
And this draft is, of course, not nearly as exciting as the next year's draft because we have seemingly another generational player with Bedard, which we're not going to be able to draft even if we tank this year. And who knows how well they'll do next year. I could see next year being kind of a middling possible playoff team based on the items that Chuck Fletcher, if he is still GM, which I don't believe he will be for much longer, it puts together. Ryan Ellis will come back, and that's certainly a great addition to have back on your team. But he'll be 34 at that point. I don't know. This team is. I'm trying to think of another comparison. Like it's not anything to get excited about in terms of the future or the present. Isn't that really like that's the worst thing about being a Flyers fan?
You know what that is? That's purgatory, and that's the worst place to be.
Yeah,
it's the worst place to be, man. And it scares me because it's like it's more of this, It's
and it's weird because we finally for years the Flyers had so much figured out, but then it was like, well, our goaltender sucks, and now we have Carter Hart, who I think as much as Giroux should be on the trading block, just let Carter Hart go.
Oh my God!
God's sakes.
Oh man,
that would be
for God's
sake, ground rebuild.
Well, we have that monster guy over in Russia. Let's if as long as he doesn't pledge to Putin, let him come over and play. But I'm feeling worse for him. I know that there's a lot of Giroux sycophants both in the Flyers fandom and on this network. I am not one of them. I don't care if he ever wins the Stanley Cup. But I do care about Carter Hart. And I'm so saddened by how we have finally a number one goalkeeper. The first one we've had since Hextall. Great Flyer, worst Flyer GM ever. And we're just tanking his career. We're ruining. I can't even imagine how he looks his other teammates in the eyes.
That and the coaching staff and anybody at all, really. And I hear you.
Yeah, we talk about Mike Yo's shaved head. He looks like shit. Like and usually when a guy like that, like kind of a who should be a tough guy, Mike Yo is kind of a tough name. Like if there's ever a Philly name that you've ever heard, it's Mike Yo. And it's his stupid shaved head, and seeing his press conferences just makes me so mad. I found these like irrational, petty things to get upset about, and Mike Yo wasting a good shaved head, Jason Statham, Mark Messier style, is kind of pissing me off.
You said
what else do we have to complain about right now?
No, we can complain about a bunch of stuff. I actually want to throw it back and just tell you how much I appreciate you, Zach, for asking about if we could curse on this show early, because we had Theo Fleury on at one point, And he said fuck about 47 times.
Oh, that's like every other word.
And about 45 minutes in, he then goes, I don't know if you have a PG audience. I was like, you know what? They are like, not anymore. At this, anybody that was PG is already signed off at this point.
I could actually do a Theo because I've interviewed Theo myself. I can do a Theo impression. He kind of sits like this. He's on his couch. He's like, fuck, man. Fuck. Yeah, fucking, we're some fucking tough guys. Yeah, fucking fuck. Oh, fuck. That was and then
God. My favorite part when we did it was he was like, if some fucking assistant coach came up in my face and I made a fucking mistake with a fucking iPad, I break that fucking shit in some of his fucking heads. By the way, give a PG audience, I don't know that PG audience.
Yeah. Yeah. Theo's a great interview.
He was awesome, man. That's my favorite. Yeah, that was fantastic.
He's got some sort of loony opinions, but I think I understand where they come from. Like every institution that was supposed to support him let him down. He was supposed to have not go through what he went through. So I get why he has no trust in the government whatsoever. But he just sits at home and just spouts out kind of some nutty shit.
He was awesome. And
he's great.
They were like, yeah, we have 45 minutes. I'm like, all right, sounds good. And then we're an hour and 20 minutes into the show. He goes, oh, I have to be somewhere like right now, and it's a 20-minute drive, so I gotta go, guys.
Yeah, he always says somewhere he's got to go. Yeah, which
all right, see you later.
I know he's sober, but I talked to Jim about this. We got into some of the weird stuff that he did in New York. So he went to literal underground bars because he battled with sobriety for the crux for most of his career, and he's like, yeah, I was there with like trannies and midgets. And he's like, he would just go into the weirdest shit in New York. Yeah. Oh, God bless Theo Fleury, who should be a Hall of Famer, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. There's no reason he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Well, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, he definitely burned some bridges with some people. But in terms of like stats and heart and
straight up numbers,
yeah. I love him. He's a great guy. Yeah. And he's turned his weirdness into a lot of goodness because I know people that are battling with addiction and everything that he's absolutely helped.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely making a difference, definitely positive. And he's one of the characters in the league. Like, I don't think there's most hockey players, there's not a lot of personality sometimes.
None. Right? There's like him and Brendan Shanahan, and that's about it.
Yeah, like I wish we had more personality among hockey players across the league. Like, there's just everybody's so buttoned up and everything like that.
I agree. Yeah, that's a really frustrating thing, and I saw Connor McDavid get interviewed. Connor McDavid should be an absolute superstar, right? Like, and he is, within people who follow hockey closely. But baseball has the same problem. He, like Mike Trout, is very reticent to actually get out there and showcase his personality. And Jesus, when you think back to the 80s, I know, Jack, you're like a 90s guy, and there was even a ton of personalities then. In the 80s and the 70s, it was even more. Like, you had just nutcases that were absolute blast to watch. You had the Ty Domies and the Bob Proberts, and and here in Philadelphia, the Dave Browns, just guys who were just so fun to watch, not only during the game but had personalities out of the game. And that is something the NHL really, I feel like they should send every player to an improv class. So at the after games, you don't just hear shit like, everything that Mike Yeo says is, it's frustrating, and we're just going to try. And the NBA is very good at this, where players actually speak out and do things. The NHL could use a dose of that.
Yeah, some of the commercials they have on the NHL Network where they force feed you Connor McDavid or something, they're painful to watch. It's like, jeez. And what's part of it is, like, I used to think Richard, some of the commercials he did here were the same way. They were so bad. I remember they had to like change the camera angle just to make it look somewhat different. But then if you like open up on Spit and Chicklets, they actually have a little bit of a personality. I guess I don't think McDavid does, to be honest with you. But like,
I don't either.
But like, what do you do? Like, they're like you said, Dave, they're buttoned up. Like it just they I don't know. It just comes with the territory, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe we should go with Richards and just bring some cocaine back to the locker rooms.
It must have opened him up a little bit. Where's the tear when you need him?
I will say the Ovechkin Backstrom commercial, the Liberty Mutual commercial.
It's good.
It's one of the best commercials I've seen in a long time from a hockey player. That's fantastic. And Ovi's wife is great in that thing.
It's a good commercial.
Why is he always here for breakfast?
Yeah. It is good. That's the best NHL commercial. When ESPN first started airing hockey games back in the 90s, they did some really, really great stuff. Craig McTavish had a great commercial about being the last player to not wear a helmet. And there was personality. Brett Hull had a personality. When I used to meet guys like at NHL, I think it was 93, the NHL All-Star game was here. And I was privileged enough to just meet everybody, Chelios, Lemieux, Gretzky, and they're all hysterically funny. And the older guys that they brought in, Marcel Dion, obviously Bobby Hull. I don't know if you want him around. He's kind of like, I don't know, hockey's Pete Rose. But they're all really funny if you let them be funny. And it's such a shame that, God, the closest thing we've had to personality in the Flyers hockey recently was, unfortunately, Jacob Voracek. I mean, at least like he would get a little cantankerous sometimes.
Well, we had, I think one of my favorite things, he went after the one reporter before calling him a weasel. And then most recently, Draisaitl, I forget the name of the guy that asked him the question, but Draisaitl, handled it very, very professionally, I think, when he was getting called pissy and all that stuff at the one interview. He's like, no, I'm not going to comment on that. You go ahead. You write about it. You make your own opinion. He goes, why are you so pissy? He goes, I'm not pissy. Yeah, you're being pissy. All right.
Good. I think that kind of interaction is great. It's too bad Sam Carchidi got kind of sort of let go from the Philadelphia Inquirer, because it's the only thing that ever got Giroux sort of fired up was when he asked the question. Yeah. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that in a post-game press conference. Like, go ahead, unload on a reporter. If you're not going to unload on anybody in the ice, then yell at a reporter for asking a pretty rote question. We kind of just unfortunately, like the NHL press, it sort of feeds into the banality of the players, because they don't really ask anything pressing. They don't ask anything interesting. And if you're not going to pose an interesting question, you're not going to really get an interesting answer. It's very unfortunate.
It's true. Some of those I feel like are a waste of time. I used to watch everything. And I could have went to today. I could have went down there, but I'd rather do this because they're going to ask all the same stuff.
Yeah.
Although I can almost barely hear them sometimes because they're so like, the monotone, blah, 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 blah. And it's just, it's all verbatim from what they said the previous game. Yeah. Sometimes win or loss, it's the same, and it's just, it's stupid. That's why, you're right. Voracek was a good one because he would come out of nowhere with some of his stuff.
You never thought he was upset with someone, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, Voracek really hates that dude. It's kind of fun.
Absolutely.
And if we're not going to win, then let's at least have some sparkling personalities. Harking back to the film Slapshot, like they sucked, but they were certainly fun off the ice. And I don't know, like, to just come on and trash someone. What do you have to lose at this point? Like, Zach McEwen is the best story the Flyers have this year, besides Carter Hart, of course. But like, that's sad. So let's start creating some stories that aren't necessarily on the ice.
No, absolutely, man. Like, I completely agree. And plus, I just think that's a problem like league wide. They have a hard time just being personable. Like, I would love to see, because I think hockey players are so relatable, so like kind of like blue collar, like working kind of athletes, like the guys that you can kind of talk to, just like have a beer with. Is kind of how I feel like that would be. I mean, Zach, you probably know better than I could, but like I feel like those are what they kind of are. I wish we would see more personality league wide. I don't care, whether they're a rival, West Coast. Like I don't care. I just want to see a little bit more emotion, a little more enthusiasm out of these guys.
Could I say that I would rather see Jack. That fucking mustache is amazing. I would love to see you as the face of the Flyers organization at the end of every game, especially a loss, and almost like in a suit, being like, "Fucking ask me something," because I feel like you're a lot more intimidating than physically in terms of your face. Then then Giroux or McEwen or Van Dream's like for sure coming up and saying that, like, go ahead, ask me a question.
Straight out of Goodfellas.
Seriously, sorry to derail, but I've been wanting to say that the whole night.
Him, Joe Pesci, and Ray Liotta are hanging out after the show.
I'd love that.
My God. It's funny you brought up Slapshot, because when I first got here and the game was getting going, it felt like the beginning of the movie. A third of the stadium was full, like they were easily losing, looked terrible. They had a very few chances, and you just knew they were going to lose. Just knew it. And you knew how bad the team they were playing going outside of McDavid and Draisaitl. And I'm just like, but I know it's not going to end like the movie does. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I get to feel the start of the movie, but this is the movie is everything. And it's very depressing, because at least there was like personality, and there's something with that. And you go on Twitter and it makes you even more depressed, because fans, like you just brought up how McEwen is like been a good story.
Yeah.
But there's people hating on him, comparing him directly to somebody on, I think TK actually. And it was like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, you got a guy on the fourth line. Why are you hating on him? What do you honestly expect from a guy like that? And when you're here, you're watching, you see he's throwing the body around. He out Tom Wilson the other night.
He did his best.
You're right. Like, what do you expect from a guy like that? You're going to give me his goals for on ice crap? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, analytic stuff for sure.
Oh, that makes me sick in its own right. I'm almost be happy when they move on from Ristolainen, and just so that debate can just be somebody else's problem, because God forbid you ask a question and have a different take.
Yeah,
it just blows my mind. So, but yeah, it's low. It's slow right now.
It really is.
That's why I would love to march in there and ask some real questions and throw my mustache around, but I can't.
Well,
I'll never be allowed back.
Yeah. And what question could you really ask that at this point would be honestly answered? And who would you ask it to?
That's
kind of the problem with the Flyers too, is that Zach McEwen has become our nice story. If it's your fourth liner who throws some fists sometimes, that can't be. Like, Dave Schultz was certainly a big part of the Flyers' success, but they would have won without Dave Schultz. I want to alert everybody. But he was definitely, like, he embraced the culture, and he was a great story, but he wasn't the big story. You had the stars, you had Bernie Clarkey, you had Reggie, to a far lesser extent, the sometimes contributions of my father. There was other great stories, when now all we can focus on is really, like, if you champion anybody's performance this season, and you mention anyone but McEwen and Hart, I think you're kind of obliviating about how good that player was. Like, Atkinson hasn't necessarily been a disappointment, but he hasn't been a thrilling success either. I know he plays with more heart than some of the other players, but then there's just no one to get excited about. So if anyone is trashing you for getting excited about McEwen, then they're kind of the embodiment of what's missing in Flyers culture. He at least is doing something that is trying to spark his team to win, and everybody else on most nights, tonight being a great example. Jesus, I mean, it was one of those nights that I don't think I can call anybody out for playing terribly, but nobody was memorable either.
No, and they never are, except for maybe against Washington, McEwen, for reasons we'd said already, and Hart.
Yeah.
And other than that,
always Hart.
Yeah, unless a guy has a 2-goal game or whatever, that's why, for me, I think the term untouchable gets thrown around way too easily with players. I feel like there shouldn't be that many untouchable players for me. And for me, it's Hart. And I know you might trade him, Zach, but
no, I mean, I don't mean that, but it would be just for the good. Because do you ever feel this when he takes off his helmet? We're older than him, I'm assuming, and he's so young, and you just get like this paternal feeling about him, like, oh, you poor guy, you little kid. You're out there doing your best, and all the adults around you are just failing you.
Especially, definitely last year, I got that a lot because it showed in his play. Not so much this year, but last year I was like, I'm glad he already has a sports psychiatrist because he's going to need one regardless. And this season, I'm glad that he's kind of playing past some of that, and he's not falling to pieces, which shows his growth. Which shows that what's Dave. I'm saying, break it down now while Hart's young and rebuild up for when he's around 26, 27 years old. We can get rolling again, because otherwise they're going to waste his career just like they did Drew's.
Wait, I'm just not waiting 7-8 years. If they can do it in 3, I'm in. Let's make progressive moves. And honestly, I'm on full fade the 2022 draft. Like trade back 4 times and acquire more 2023 picks. Whatever, any veterans we sell off at the trade deadline, only 2023. Get as many 2023 picks as we can get. Let us control that draft. I'm okay with that if that's the plan. But I absolutely don't. I don't want to sit down and go, no, we're going to draft wherever we are. We're going to pick whatever we got, let them develop, and then 4 to 9 years later, we might compete. I don't want to do any of that.
Is that because do you not believe in the draft picking ability of Chuck Fletcher, or is
I believe in zero. I have zero faith in the player development of this franchise. Zero. No. Who? You know what I mean? Giroux, Couturier, maybe like
Lindros.
Yeah, like exactly. We're going back to Lindros. Like, come on, so I believe zero that. If we have to build this team through veteran acquisitions mostly, cool, fine. The Rams just won a damn Super Bowl doing it. Like, you can build a team through veteran acquisitions.
Now, Dave, I'm going to stop you. The Rams drafted a lot before they started adding to that team. Aaron Donald was a first-round pick.
They're starting quarterback, their number 2 wide receiver, their star cornerback. There's a lot of people they brought in via trade,
Cooper Kupp was drafted. Cooper Kupp, the Super Bowl MVP.
Cooper Kupp was a late-round draft pick, too.
Yep, he was
they added the Ramses later. Yeah, but I get but I'm on that same page though. Like, you got to draft something of a core, and then you start doing that. And I that's what I thought the trajectory we were on was. But a lot, and you bring up a good point with player development. Not a whole lot to write home about.
Yeah,
so that's a problem.
Yeah, if you want to, Jack, if you want to go ahead and tear it down and get all these draft picks, do you have any faith that they're going to actually develop any of them? Look, are we just selling off veterans and making draft picks just for mediocre talent that we trade off for 2 second-round picks later? Like,
my honest hope is that they make a lot of changes up top as well. I mean, let's be real. This team's been bad for how long? Like, how does certain people still have their jobs? They have a lot of people that they're injured. How often these guys get injured? Like, did you see Derek Brassard's? Like, he plays a game a month. Like, if you look at his last 5 games, it's December, January, and twice in February, and I think in November before that. Like, it's insane. Like, something's wrong here. Like, this isn't. Did Kevin Hayes go under the knife 3 times in 1 calendar year? Like, is that something we discussed? Like, that doesn't happen. That's something. There's a lot wrong. Yeah, there's something weird there. Exactly. There's a lot wrong. Like, and it all stems from the top, obviously, and all over. And you know what? We'll see. Maybe Danny Briere, if he is the guy they bring in. I think we all got our fingers crossed because we like the guy. We don't honestly know what he's capable of, but anything's different at this point, I guess. So if he has a different vision, if he has an idea, and they can bring in different people and start to slowly change things, what else can you hope for? Because continuing to push the peg through the round hole like we have been for this year, last year, probably next year, I just see we're not looking at playoffs to 2040s. At that point.
Yeah, it's really. Yeah, Danny Briere is clearly being groomed, and I had him on my show. And the first thing I said is, "So when are you going to become GM?" Because he's just kind of got that persona of a GM, right? But I say that only buying into the persona. I know nothing about his hockey knowledge. The Maine Mariners is, if you're going to do training, I can't think of a better organization. The Maine Mariners has an amazing history, especially an amazing history when it comes to feeding the Flyers incredible talents. I mean, during the 1980s, basically the Maine Mariners became the Philadelphia Flyers, and he's groomed that team to be something pretty great. And he's clearly around a lot more than he was. And it's always fun yet nerve-wracking to have an ex-Flyer back. in the front office. It's nice to have a familiar face, but it's also like we've had Clarkey and Paul Holmgren.
That's all we've had. What do you mean nerve-wracking? It's all we've had.
We've had a former Flyer. Wes Farwell, future guest, who brought us Eric Lindros. And then I think I know that Clarkey brought it up about a month or two ago, Ron Hextall. And I can't blame Ron Hextall enough for where the Flyers are now. And I know that does no good. You can't change the past or anything. But it is still, when you understand the trajectory of this team, Ron Hextall singularly ruined it. He is the one to blame more than anybody else. And then beyond that, there's Dave Scott, who sucks also. But Ron Hextall he's such a divisive figure, because what better Flyer as a Flyer can you remember? Like, just I loved watching him. His ferocity, the balls to just shoot the puck at the net and take shots at some of the biggest enforcers in the league. But then as a GM, was just an absolute piece of shit, both as a decision maker and as a human being. And it's really a shame that I was talking to an ex-Flyer earlier today, he's just upset. It took Ed Snyder 50 years to build this culture, and it took Ron Hextall about 3 months to destroy it.
That was the biggest change when I look at, how good the team was coming in and who took over, and when this era of horrible Flyers hockey started. It really was Hextall that really kicked it off. And the culture was a big thing. The cutting out the alumni and the food, weird things he had. But then, as you said, decision-making as well. I thought he was going for like that true rebuild, which he really didn't do. Like, we didn't have a break it all down rebuild. He traded Coburn and later Shen. Outside of that, he kept the team status quo. Drew right through his prime, just really never went out and like tried to stay competitive. I guess JVR was his biggest offseason. Remember, he signed Dale Weiss to a 4-year deal, for God's sake. Like, he never really added to the team to win now. It was just to get to the next stage of his rebuild, I guess. Like, I can't think of any first-round picks he added to his team in addition to his own, outside of the Coburn deal, which was, I thought, a good deal. But that was, again, one of his first moves. So I bought into the Kool-Aid. I thought he was going to draft well. It seemed like they had the idea right, and it just couldn't pick one or the other. And he didn't hit on what he needed to hit on, especially when let's be real, he shouldn't even been drafted number 2 overall. They think they had the 13th overall pick, or they should have. Yeah, they kind of won the lottery and moved up. So it's not even like they bottomed out, So it's just, and then they still get screwed. But it's just, he just didn't do anything right. And the more I think about it, the destroying of the culture bothers me even more now, because somehow it's still here, and it's clearly still an issue. And losing is just the mentality of this team now, and they just can't get out of it.
That's the biggest thing that bothers me. You mentioned the culture and the mindset. When that kind of stuff sets in, where losing becomes acceptable, like, it's hard to shake that. That's why you see in like NFL franchises like the Lions and the Browns. Like, you referenced the tweet earlier. Like, when you become that kind of franchise that just can't seem to ever win or get past that hump, like, that's just who you become. And for the longest time, for my whole life, for most of the 32 years I was on this earth, the Flyers played to win every year. Say what you want about Paul Holmgren. I got it. Salary cap, all that stuff. That man tried to win a cup every single year. That was his goal. He didn't care. He wanted the cup every single year. If whatever he did, whether you thought it was misguided or not, he brought in the best person he thought to help them win that single year. He wanted to win. So I mean, it's a shame that somehow, like, missing the playoffs became acceptable. Losing seasons became acceptable. Losing seasons, that's just where we're at as a franchise, and that's one of the most frustrating things. Like, winning used to be the expectation. You were supposed to be one of those franchises that was there every year. 16 teams make the playoffs in this league, and we were supposed to be one of them every year. We were right up there with Detroit for the longest time. We were one of them guys. Every year, Flyers made the playoffs. I had friends that would come up and talk to me. I barely watch regular season because I know they're going to be there in the playoffs. And that's just not what it is anymore. Like, so when that kind of stuff sets in, that's when a franchise can bottom out. And you can end up sitting in the cellar for years, decades, because you have a mindset that losing's okay.
Yeah.
So you burn it all to the ground and get rid of all that mentality and start over.
But a rebuild only works if someone has a plan.
That's true.
That's the thing. I mean, otherwise it's just perennial tanking.
Yeah.
Like imagine if
then you wind up like Edmonton and Buffalo. Yeah. So hey, maybe Briere's got that vision. Maybe Briere's got that vision, and we wind up more like Chicago and LA and Pittsburgh, God forbid. I don't know. It could go either way, but you do have to have a plan, and maybe that is Briere's plan. But we know that they're not doing that next year, regardless. So that's gonna next year, this deadline, and then next year, the offseason, all that. That's gonna show a lot.
I would say this: that Briere has the full endorsement of people that I was surprised by. I think that he is seen as a very keen hockey mind, and I think with Briere, the thing that he had to learn with Maine and just being a GM is, and this was, I did an interview with Clark, and this is the hardest thing is going from player to coach, is that as a player, if you get cut, you get traded, whatever, it always feels personal. To go from that personal feeling to having the person that has to then be the decision maker. And cut players, trade players, everything like that. That's a difficult transition to make. And Briere hasn't been out of the game that long. Like, it's certainly less than Clark was. He went from captain to GM like in a year. Yeah. But I think that's the transition that Briere has had to make. But everyone seems to see his sharp hockey mind in terms of developing and scouting young talent. So that's at least one thing to be excited about, I suppose. If you want to just burn the whole thing to the ground and see a rebuild, is I would certainly rather have Briere oversee it. I don't like Chuck Fletcher, but I don't hate Chuck Fletcher. He's just sort of a mediocre placeholder, kind of like Mike Yeo is. And I think that he did the best that he could in the offseason, but clearly none of that has really worked out. Where Briere, I think that what would be great about him is that he would embrace a player like Morgan Frost, or whenever he's healthy, Wade Allison, and bring them up and make them part of the team a little bit faster than the organization is now. For Cam York to still not be a full-time Flyer at this point is absolutely ludicrous. You know, Keith Yandle, you got your goddamn streak. Let's get rid of you, and let's start trying out our only top 75 prospect in Cam York. Like the fact that that's not happening is kind of a joke. And I think that Danny Briere would bring a little bit more better judgment about young players than Chuck Fletcher is, having been a young player himself.
That's a
good you look at Steve Yzerman. I mean, there is a case to be made that ex-players can make really good GMs because they do embrace a culture. And I think Steve Yzerman is building something very, very special in Detroit, and certainly has built something and then leaving it in Tampa Bay. And I think Briere is kind of like one of those players that could do the same. So I am just doing my best to inject any sort of optimism into the next 5 years of being a Flyers fan.
Briere's about all I got. You know, whatever they do, if he is everything we're hoping, then it's something. It's kind of, unfortunately, it's kind of like how I felt about Hextall about 2014 or so. But only because he was a highly sought after assistant GM. Like, I remember they had to give him the job because other teams were knocking on the door, and Briere already was already on the list of candidates for Montreal, so it's like, hey, if they see something, and I love Briere, obviously, so, and I don't think he'll be like Hextall. It's just gut feeling. I'd be absolutely blown away if he were like that to people. I think he's very well liked. I think he's a true person. I think we all do. I mean, that is hope. I need anything to cling to. And that'll work. That'll definitely work, because they better start serving alcohol up here. I'll pay for it, but I can't get by on coffee and water at these games. It's tough. But you know what, though, we got the trade deadline coming up. I look forward to that at least. I think it's the 21st, so it's
20. I think the 23rd.
23rd, right now. So 3 weeks.
I think it's going to be absolutely disappointing. I think people are going to expect way more than what's going to happen. I think Drew's going to end up staying. I think we're going to end up selling off Keith Yandel with like a 6th-round pick and getting nothing in return.
That would be the saddest day ever.
We're going to sell JVR off with the 2nd-round pick. There's going to be no major moves.
The 2nd-round pick for JVR?
No. We're gonna trade JVR with the 2nd-round pick.
Oh,
and get nothing in return. No, we're gonna be paying people to get JVR.
Yes.
Zach, at some point, I'm gonna sit down and write a trilogy about the JVR and the Philadelphia Flyers saga because I have to break the whole thing down.
It's the weirdest thing is with JVRs, what justified. I thought that there must have been one 40, 45 goal season. Nope. And it's not there. Like what? He's kind of of all the signings, that's the one. And I'm not being original with this. Obviously, there's a lot of JVR criticism, but I assumed there must have been some sort of previous play that justified $7 million. You had. I remember a long time ago, like Carlos Beltran had an amazing playoff series and justified like a signing because he had that one series or playoff. There's nothing there with JVR. It's the most confounding thing ever as a Flyers fan.
Perennial 30-goal scorer for the Maple Leafs.
Perennial. I think he did it once, maybe twice.
He had two.
Twice. He did it twice. Yeah, both with Toronto. It felt like I think we all were okay with. Well, I'm sorry. What was that?
I don't think he hit 30 twice.
Dave, double check that. I did. He did once, right?
He definitely did once.
At least once. Hold on.
Okay. It felt like we kind of let it slide when it happened because we were so starved for them to do anything real in free agency and add to the team. And it almost felt like Hextall was just like, all right, I got to do something here. This guy's a former Flyer. They're going to love it. It's going to help ticket sales, yada, yada. And yeah, it's a shame because I do like the guy, but Jesus, I mean, talk about getting nothing for your buck.
Nothing.
All right. 2013, 2014, 30 goals.
Yeah.
2017, 2018, 36 goals.
Okay, that's not.
And that was he must have. Would he become a free agent after that season?
Yeah. His second and his last season in Toronto. 36 goals in his last season in Toronto, and then we signed him for $7 million a year.
Yep, that's kind of flyer.
I know. Yeah, that's not perennial. That's every so often.
It's not.
No,
that's bookend.
And for the record, before he went to Toronto. In the 3 seasons he was in Philly, he combined for 47 goals total in 3 seasons.
I don't know. This is just life as a Flyers fan now.
It is.
Just maybe embrace it for a little bit.
I feel like I was destined for this. I should have paid attention when I was 7 years old, and the Legion of Doom was at their height in '97, and we were supposed to win the Cup against the Red Wings, and then they swept us out. And I remember distinctly, we were at a Flyers party watching one of the games, and the Red Wings score on our power play. It's a shorthanded goal, and my aunt turns to me, a 7-year-old, and goes, "Can they do that?" And I feel like that set the whole tone for my whole life as a Flyer fan.
My dad played for both the Flyers and the Penguins, and I had a choice to make. So I grew up kind of a Penguins fan, I'll admit. And then at some point I was like, Flyers is where my heart is. I live in South Jersey and everything. Worst decision I ever made in my life.
Oh my god!
Because I can justifiably defend myself as a Penguins fan, but decided to go with the Flyers. It was the day actually that Lindros got traded. I was like, okay, well, I'll just be a Flyers fan. I've chosen my team. I still love Mario, but I'm a Flyers fan. God damn, I swear, life has not worked out since then. I should have just stuck with Pittsburgh.
I'm so sorry, Zach.
It's funny when your team wins like the championship, and I've only really experienced it like twice. And but it's not. Neither have been my sport. Like hockey's my sport. Like I was going to games at like 2 years old, like before Lindros was even on the team, even, and I barely remember him, but still. And to go through what we're going through, God, knock on wood, God forbid, when it does happen, I'll understand fans that cry. Like I will.
Oh my God, yeah.
Honestly understand the tears. Like it is to see the lowest of the low, because for a while we were always good. Now to see this, to eventually come back, hopefully, I get it. Before I didn't really get it. I'm like, okay, it's sports. I'm happy, but now I get it. I absolutely get it. It's ridiculous.
It's kind of the beauty. That is the beauty of sports, right? Is that it can. I happen to live in Kansas City the year the Royals won back in 2015, and everything else divides us, right? And sports is silly and stupid, and sports talk radio is ludicrous, and this show is stupid and great. But it's like but nothing brings us together like sports does. And I remember that year, because I didn't experience, obviously, I wasn't born yet. The Flyers parade, where 3 million, however many people, came out and supported this team at the parade, the Flyers, the Broad Street Bullies. But I saw it in Kansas City, and there's nothing more beautiful than a championship team and what it can do. Like if I'm wearing this hat the day that the Flyers won the Stanley Cup, and I see someone else wearing that hat, we're instant friends. And that's the way it was in Kansas City. And I had no affiliation with Royals team whatsoever. But just to see everybody come together, it is something that should move you to tears, because it's beyond the sport. It's something that just unites people, that in a way that there's no piece of legislation or no other thing that can bring people together the way that sports can. And I totally get tears. I don't make fun of anybody for crying when their team wins. I think that it's absolutely justified and wonderful.
I think the Royals were a great example, because they were a bad team for a long time as well, like perennial drafting at the top, and watching their stars go to other teams when they have one or two, like Zach Greinke or whoever, you know, and then to finally to get it. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Except for I think that I don't know how used they are to losing, where we're kind of not, and this is kind of like
they got kind of used to it.
Yeah, they kind of got so yeah, no, I think that's a perfect example. And they beat the Mets. They kept the Mets from winning the World Series.
I had two very different experiences 10 years apart. So Jack, you mentioned the 2 times we got to celebrate. 2008 with the Phillies.
Great.
I was at Temple University. I ran down Broad Street as an 18-year-old kid, lose my mind. I watched people get tased. They were climbing on cars, pulling off banners off left. Absolutely insane. We were out till like 9 in the morning. Like it was nuts out there. It was one of my greatest memories. 10 years later, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl and people went nuts, I was deployed at the time in Guantanamo Bay. And I actually was with who is now my wife. I met her down there. She was in a separate unit, right? But I ended up getting demoted the night that the Eagles won the Super Bowl, because I violated 3 different drinking bans.
3? 3? That's awesome.
Yeah.
All I did was cut class.
Wow.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So when the Flyers do win the Stanley Cup, I will be crying regardless of my location.
Can I just say, that is honestly, you should tell the Eagles that story. That is a great Philadelphia story. I know it happened in Guantanamo Bay, but demoted at Guantanamo is a screenplay I'd like to work on. That's amazing.
My wife almost broke we were just talking at that time. She almost broke up with me that same night too. She's like, I've never seen this part of you. Like, what is going on? She's like, this is so crazy to me right now. I've been playing it so cool for months. And she come over to watch the game with us. And I'm losing my fucking mind. Me and my buddies are doing like Stone Cold Steve Austin, like beer chugs and stuff.
Oh my
God. I love it. Yeah, if the Flyers ever win again, I mean, I'm gonna have tears. And then I can't imagine the experience the city that we'll go through. But again, we're talking nonsense right now. We're talking rainbows and unicorns. Yeah,
we are. I might
how
be
far
retired.
away from you from a Stanley Cup?
Well, Zach, listen, we're pushing up on the 55-minute mark, getting close to the hour. So you're the honored guest tonight, man. So I'll tell you what, the floor is yours. Anything you want to promote, anything you want to hype up, anything hockey related, not hockey related, it's all yours right now. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Happy to join the High and Wide Network. I took a couple month respite from the podcast, but it's been really, really successful. My dad used to play hockey, is what it's called. Please check out previous episodes. I've got Bernie Perrant, Bobby Clark, and then Outside the Flyers organization, Grant Fuhr. Willie O'Ree was one of my favorite episodes that I've ever done. First black hockey player to ever play was, amazing to talk to him. But it's a Flyers centric podcast, but I also talk to people outside of the Flyers universe, and it's been a blast. I started it basically just to get my dad to call his old teammates that he hadn't talked to for a while. And then it started. Yeah. And then it kind of, my dad's been a guest, but don't download that episode first. Father and son just bickering at each other. I'm great. And it's coming back very soon. Really great guests coming up. I feel like I have a somewhat unique perspective, but the best thing is that my perspective doesn't matter. It's the perspective of the players. I try to draw the stories out of them as best as I can. And every hockey player that comes on the show has a really great story. And I'd like to share that. And because I think the NHL alumnus is a tremendous organization. And I think ex-NHL players are just the best guys that I've ever known in my life, and being able to share their stories has been an honor. So glad to have High and Wide on board with me, and it also gives me the opportunity to talk to you guys. It's really fun because I love talking hockey. There's nothing better.
We love it, Zach. Thanks so much, man. We're so happy to have you, man.
Thanks, man.
No problem. Jack, you rate the game, man. Anything else you got to add tonight? What do you got to say besides that you want to burn it down and rebuild?
I'm here, so I'll start the groundwork. All right. So if you hear any rumors, yes, it was me. But no, I just want to double down with my dad used to play hockey. Whenever I see what guests you have on, and I'm always blown away. It's absolutely amazing. I love your show. It's great. So I'm so happy that we signed our best act. I was going to say our JVR, but that would have been really wrong.
We just got him. You're throwing, jeez, man.
We're still in the honeymoon phase. We got our free agent acquisition, and we're very happy with that. So yeah, it was awesome. This was fun, guys.
Yeah, really good time.
This is a blast for Zak Kindrachuk, for Jack. I'm the real Delco Dave. High and Wide fam. You guys have a great night. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Awesome.